This episode of the Box Office Babbler was the idea of my wife. She's credited in my videos as my historical consultant, Jen HH. She majored in history in college. I dedicate this episode to her. As a warning, the movie we discussed today deals extensively with sexual harassment and sexual discrimination and includes showing women using marijuana. But we're not going to dwell on it. I'm nowhere near monetizing this channel, and there's really no risk in covering this movie. It's a good way to celebrate Women's History Month. Judy Brenly, played by Jane Fonda, shows up for her first day at work. She is assigned to work in the same section overseen by Violet Newstead, played by Lily Tomlin. Newstead reports to Franklin Hart, played by Dabney Coleman. His secretary is Doralee Rhodes, played by Dolly Parton. Hart is the worst combination between sexist and egotistical. He takes credit for much of the work that Violet does. Hart berates Brenly for not knowing how to do her job instantly, but worst of all, Franklin Hart is constantly sexually harassing Doralee. One day, the three ladies in the film each have their own run-in with Hart. Judy sees a co-worker get fired for revealing her salary. Violet is passed over for a promotion again because Hart thinks the position she is trying to get should have gone to a man. This is not the first time it has happened. Rhodes finds out that Hart is spreading a rumor that the two of them are having an affair. All three of them end up at the bar sharing a drink. After sharing a couple of drinks, the three go to Doralee's house to share a joint. After satisfying the cannabis cravings with some southern barbecue, each fantasized about how to get even with the boss. Judy has a fantasy about hunting Hart and posting his head as a trophy. Doralee fantasizes about sexually harassing her boss. When I took a business management course at the University of Nebraska, Omaha, this section of the movie was shown when we discussed sexual harassment. This scene puts the shoe on the other foot. Violet fantasized about becoming a Disney princess who poisons the boss, while animals look on with approval. The next Monday at the office, Violet gets her groceries mixed up. Instead of sweetener in Hart's coffee, she stirs in rat poison. Hart attempts to take a sip, but he falls all the way back on his chair and hits his head on the way down and is knocked unconscious, never taking a sip of the poisoned coffee. Violet, however, believes that she has poisoned Hart. Hart wakes up in the emergency room and decides to go home before getting x-rays. Violet hears that another person has passed away and, assuming it to be Hart, tries to hide the body. After a hilarious turn of events, the body is returned to the hospital. The next day, they arrive at the office to find that Hart is well. The office informer overhears the women talking about the incident during a smoke break. She tells Hart, who attempts to use the information to his advantage. He tells Doralee that he knows they tried to kill him and offers to forget about the entire incident if she will have sex with him. Doralee refuses. A tussle ensues and Hart ends up hogtied and kidnapped. He is held hostage at his own home using a rig Violet has set up. During his time as a hostage, the ladies find evidence that Hart was defrauding the company, but they have to keep him tied up until they get the evidence. During that time, the ladies implement some office reforms, which we will discuss later. Hart's wife returns from a vacation early and sets him free, giving Hart time to cover his tracks and plot to put the ladies in prison. When he returns to the office, he promises to immediately undo Violet's reforms, but at that point, the chairman of the board shows up for a surprise visit to congratulate Hart as his reforms have increased productivity. As a reward, Hart is sent to oversee a company expansion in Brazil, with Violet being promoted in his place. Oh yes, I've given away the entire plot of the movie, but it's still a funny movie. You should watch it. What I'd like to talk about, however, is the reforms that Violet put in place in a company and whether or not they'd really work. There are 4 that I will address in this video. They are on-site daycare, equal opportunity and pay, flexible scheduling, and job sharing. These reforms don't only have benefits for women in the workforce, but for men as well. The ones I will not address in this video are drug and alcohol and tobacco rehabilitation programs, as today those are mostly administered by health insurance programs. During the Second World War, on-site daycare centers were a necessity and they were funded by the government. Young fathers were drafted into the armed forces. Young mothers were needed in the factories. The government funded these daycare centers at factories to allow women to bring their children to work with them. After the war, these faded out of existence. The idea would come back in the 1970s. Well, sort of. One result of the chaos of the 1960s was that there would be more women in the workforce. Many were barred from their careers because they wanted to have children. By the late 1970s, 45% of mothers of infants and toddlers were in the workforce. By the mid-1980s, it was 50%. Much of this was by economic necessity and not by choice. Some turned to the government to bring back on-site government-funded daycare. In 1971, President Richard Nixon vetoed a Child Development Act, and Congress would not be able to override his veto. Nixon believed that the private sector would be better to solve the problem. Even though there was never an effort for government-sponsored on-site daycare again, the government stood behind the idea. The 1980s saw a push for more family-friendly workplaces. There were tax incentives given to companies who had on-site daycare. There are 3 pros to on-site daycare. One recent study shows that companies that had on-site daycare saw a significant decrease in employee turnover, improvements in gender equality, and a greater participation of females in the workforce, especially in fields like science and technology, which are still dominated by men. There are also benefits to the employees that are not seen in metrics, such as less parental stress and helping employees become more productive. On-site daycare can have benefits that do not show up on the bottom line. It can help both baby and mother when the baby is still nursing. That reduces the need to express and store breast milk, which can be more than a slight inconvenience. It also helps fathers as well. It reduces the stress of commuting to a separate daycare facility. It provides peace of mind knowing that the child is nearby, and it enables the father to be a greater participant in the life of the child. On-site daycare may cost money and it may cost space that could be used for other things, but it increases work productivity. More businesses should have them. The push for equal pay for women began shortly after the U.S. Civil War. In 1869, a letter to the New York Times questioned why female government employees were paid less than their male counterparts. The first Equal Pay Act was introduced in 1945. The Equal Pay Act took until 1963 to get signed into law by President Kennedy. But even today, surveys show that women are still being paid less than their male counterparts. Equal pay has many benefits for the business. Morale increases. You see better engagement at work and more job satisfaction. This decreases turnover. It helps attract top talent. But can you put this in numbers? A recent Australian study found that closing the gender pay gap could potentially increase productivity in their nation by 5%. Diverse teams are more productive because they bring alternative ideas to the forefront. If everyone feels valued and included, they work harder. Overall, a diverse team has better problem-solving skills. It may be difficult to quantify at a microeconomic level, but Australia seems to think that at a macroeconomic level, it is better for them and for the society. Henry Ford and the Kellogg Company began experimenting with flexible hours in the early 20th century. The idea began to take flight in the 1960s in West Germany. A management consultant named Crystal Kammerer made the suggestion to allow employees to choose their own start and stop times. In 1967, Messerschmitt, Bolkow, and Blum implemented flex time to reduce absenteeism, tardiness, and to help employees beat the traffic. It gradually caught on elsewhere. This is sometimes difficult to implement, and not every job can provide this benefit. I currently work for a job that allows for flexible hours, but there are limits. In my case, we need to be available to meet with our clients, and we need to put in 40 hours per week. In the film 9 to 5, they had the choice to report to work at 8, 9, or 10. Flex time provides time to attend doctor appointments, dentist appointments, or to take care of other personal needs. It is better for a work-life balance. Other benefits include reduced stress, increased production, and greater employee retention. Job sharing is probably the weakest of Violet's reforms. This is where two part-time workers share a full-time position. Together, they are one full-time employee. It's another idea that came about in the 1960s. There are problems to work out. For example, if one person is sick or on vacation, the other would need to work full-time. Even though there are improved work-life balance issues, better productivity, and more diversity, coordination and finding the right match can be difficult. In 9 to 5, it was shown to assist women who had to take care of children or elderly parents. While all four of these reforms might have a positive and measurable effect on production, it'll save the company more money in the form of reduced turnover. Replacing an employee, whether by cause, death, or attrition, costs a company a lot of money. Planned attrition, like retirement, can be taken care of in a more efficient manner and is not as costly. It is much worse when an employee drops a 2-week notice in his boss's email or does something that necessitates his termination. High turnover can increase recruiting costs. You need to hire more people in the recruiting team. In addition, you have to pay for travel, background assessments, advertising, and agency fees. Once someone is hired, there is onboarding and training and efficiency lost by other members who are showing the newbies the ropes. It is estimated that replacing an employee costs a company 1.5 to 2 times a person's salary. In my career, I have worked for 4 companies that no longer exist. I have seen high turnover as a factor in the struggles that caused 2 of these companies to go under. Imagine what it'd be like to have 100% employee turnover. Companies that can't keep their employees from churning will fail sooner or later. The expense of recruiting, onboarding, and training will catch up to them. One last thing about 9 to 5. You might think that Mr. Hart was written over the top for comedy purposes and that no manager is that bad, that there can't be anyone like him. Well, there were men like him then in 1980, and there are still men like him now. Some are still just as obviously sexist as he was portrayed in the film. Men get away acting like this at work because people have to pay the bills and they have families to support. And in some of the more specialized careers, they have little options. Hart was played by Dabney Coleman. Coleman often played a jerk on screen, but let's remember that a person's on-screen persona is fictional. In real life, his son described him as curious and generous. Rest in peace, big guy. Be sure to come back for the next film on this channel. I will explore Dave and the history of the 25th Amendment, a film I think is timely for our day. Afterwards, I will explore a movie after I have seen it for the first time. I'm not going to say what it is at the moment. Thank you for watching. For my subscribers and those who support this channel, thank you. Thank you for your kind and considerate comments as well. It is greatly appreciated. Have a great rest of your day.
Horses